On this week's UBC From Here, finding a way to give back.
How did I get to where I am? And a lot of that went back to my education that I had at UBC.
Addressing transit issues to UBC's Okanagan campus.
With the university growing as quickly as it has in the last few years, there have been growing pains. However, when we started September 2013, we had a booth set up here. It was mostly students asking questions how to get around better, what's been done, and it's been much more positive.
And rediscovering the past.
I didn't find out that it had an effect on me until I got to college. And I started learning more about the residential schools, about the history. That year that I started my human service work, that summer later, I guess after my first year, my mom then told her story.
Wow.
So I was already 32 years old when I found out her story.
Hi, my name is Austin Exeni, and I'm a second-year management student here at UBC's Okanagan campus, and welcome to this week's UBC From Here. Recently, an alternative energy laboratory at the School of Engineering was dedicated to a UBC alumnus.
My name is Randall Findlay. The reason I decided to become involved with UBC is an interesting story, at least from my point of view, because it goes back for 40 years or four decades. I wasn't involved with the university, mainly because I was tied up doing the things that people do after they graduate, which is get a job, work hard at your job, buy a house, have kids, go on and do all of those things. And then at some point in your career and in your life, time starts to open up. You look around for things that you can do, things in the community. So I have been involved in my local community in Calgary for some time, but then it started to switch to thinking about how did I get to where I am? And a lot of that went back to my education that I had at UBC. Just really by coincidence, I ran into an individual who was involved and suggested, we could use some help on this big campaign that's coming along. And I was kind of at the right time, at the right place to become involved.
The Findlays have donated $225,000, and we also have an anonymous donor who added about $30,000, and half of this money will go for student bursaries, and the other half will be leveraged by a group of professors who work in environmental sciences to apply for larger amounts of funding.
Having a lab named after you, especially one that has to do with chemical and environmental, very special for me. UBC Okanagan is a special place. I don't think there's any educational institution like it in Canada. And when I was introduced to Okanagan, and realizing the opportunities that are here, the different methods of teaching and education, and above all, when I got a chance to visit the campus a couple times, there's a real vibrancy and liveliness here that you don't usually associate with universities.
Most donors look to support a unit or a group of professors who are successful. So the more success our professors have and our students, the more we become attractive to donors.
In going and talking to donors and potential donors and alum and corporate sponsors, I think that explaining and having the understanding of what's happening at UBC, which is, from my point of view, is different than what I see at other universities. The tie to the Pacific Rim is extremely important. UBC ideally focused to work on that, and then particular for UBC Okanagan, offering students a more interactive way of learning. Interesting enough, when you talk to a lot of prospective donors, they remember 300-seat lecture halls that they were asked to learn in, and when you tell them that there is a different way, it's a pretty easy sell. That folks are very supportive of that type of opportunity that you see here at Okanagan.
My best friend Paul that I met in summer camp, I lost him in the battle of mental health.
My mom was hit by a car on my 18th birthday.
I realized depression runs in my family when my cousin Jack took his own life.
He couldn't find help, and it was too late.
After the accident, everything fell apart. I lost control.
I didn't realize I was depressed until it was too late.
I wish you could have found help sooner.
I wish I would have known where to find help.
I'm glad I was able to get help.
As UBC's Okanagan campus continues to evolve, so does its transit requirements. We took a closer look at where transit is today and where it's heading.
With the university growing as quickly as it has in the last few years, there have been growing pains. And when I first started here in 2011, there was a lot of complaints about transit. However, when we started September 2013, we had a booth set up here. It was mostly students asking questions how to get around better, what's been done. And it's been much more positive.
The coverage is getting up to where it needs to be. Now you've got to actually get the vehicles and the budget to actually have frequency every 15 minutes or less, so you can have people rely on the thing without having to worry about, oh, I'm late, or it passed me early, and I don't want to stand out in the cold for half an hour.
My name is Dustin Creviston. I'm a fourth-year student at UBC Okanagan in the civil engineering program. For the last 2 summer terms in my education year, I've worked in a hybrid position with BC Transit and the City of Kelowna. And I actually got my start with the UPass campaign in November 2011, where students were asked whether to increase the cost of their UPass by $2 per month, which they overwhelmingly voted yes.
You do need something to move in some party, whether it's the user group to crowd the buses so much they're passing by people that want to ride the bus, or the government to say, we want transit, we're going to take a strong leadership position, we're going to fund the buses, and they will come if we build it. The students would say, if you ask them, it's not happening enough, fast enough. And okay, fair enough, that's a fair comment. So the local government is scrambling because of the success of their transit system.
I live in West Bank, so it's a little bit of a trek. Usually if I'm leaving during rush hour, it's an okay time to get down here. I can get down here in about an hour. But if it's any time outside of rush hour, the connections are extremely difficult. So I try to keep all my traveling to either early in the morning or going home later in the evening.
It's much better than in Malaysia, but sometimes the buses can get a little full during peak hours, like around 1 o'clock, because I've been cut off like right at the front, like once the bus is full and oh, we're not taking any more people. It happened a couple of times. One time it happened when I had class and in downtown, and then I got cut right in front, so I had to be late for class, so it wasn't very fun.
I think it'd be a lot better if we could, or have them work around the 97 exclusively. Maybe make it so I don't have to wait 30 minutes for a bus every day. Something like that, just ease the time.
I don't think that transit has adjusted to the rising student population here, and that's a problem literally every day because no one can fit onto the 197 that comes every half hour. It needs to be sent like probably every 15 minutes.
The last 2 years working for them has been very rewarding and helping to strike a balance between what the city can currently fund and what can be done to meet the needs of students. The student union has been a very powerful voice in campaigning to get better service on campus. And for the most part, the city and BC Transit in partnership have been able to deliver the service that was needed.
The happy medium of making most people happy most of the time is you really can't have pass-bys. That's got to stop. You've got to get enough vehicles in the system so you cannot leave people at the bus stop. And so what you've got to do is increase the frequency. Like I said, the coverage is getting close to where you've got neighborhoods covered pretty well. But now you got to get the frequency up so that you don't have people left at the bus stop. And then above that, it's just having a strategy in place, and BC Transit and the city working together to get that strategy where you have vehicles coming every year.
Hi, I'm Rosemary Jean Thompson, and welcome to this edition of UBC's Next Big Thing. My guest today is Mary Song. She is an Indigenous Studies student here at the university. You're in your third year. Recently, she participated in I would say, an extraordinary event. It was the Truth and Reconciliation Conference in Vancouver. Tell us a little bit about that.
Truth and Reconciliation was an event that was held for the survivors to come and tell their stories, and part of healing, I guess.
And which survivors are we talking about specifically?
Survivors of the residential schools. It was very touching for me because my mother attended the school, and I think it was more of an emotional thing than anything. It was anger, sad, kind of everything. And when they were telling their stories, I guess it was more in-depth for the feelings that listening to how it's affected their children, what they've gone through, the lives that their children leave. Hearing someone's, I think I heard one of the individuals there, their first time telling their story to their children, and their children were probably older than I was.
When they first heard the story.
They first heard the story.
Most people have heard the devastating stories of Indigenous people that were taken out of their homes, with their parents' home, and shipped off to schools. Your mom was one of these children. And as a second generation, when did you find out that this indeed happened to your mother, and how do you think it might have an effect on you?
I didn't find out that it had an effect on me until I got to college. And I started learning more about the residential schools, about the history. That year that I started my human service work, that summer later, I guess after my first year, my mom then told her story.
Wow.
So I was already 32 years old when I found out her story, her full story. It was more extreme than I thought it was. I knew growing up, kind of, hearing about the history, but it was always, leave it at that, let's not talk about it.
So she didn't go into depth, she would just maybe share a little bit of information.
Or change the subject, as soon as somebody
subject.
would talk about it.
When you went to the reconciliation, the Truth and Reconciliation Conference, were you expecting to feel the way you did?
I was kind of looking forward to hearing other people's stories and kind of knowing that even the children spoke in regards to how they felt, I guess, listening to their parents tell their story, and made me feel that I wasn't alone. How many students have their parents gone to residential school and are in education right now, are going to school right now? And that's kind of my goal through my education, is working with children and empowering them and helping them find their purpose and helping them.
Do you think having an understanding and listening to the stories that you heard at the conference and just knowing your mom's story, that will make a difference to the approach that you'll take with your life and how you share with others and how you do the work that you're being trained to do?
What I've learned through my past and the behaviors and wanting to, I guess, to keep quiet of what was happening at home because of the effects of the residential schools and what it brought on to my growing up and my childhood. I think that seeing these and knowing how I felt and what I did, I'll be able to recognize it in other children and kind of help.
One of the things that I'm so impressed with about the Indigenous people is the respect and honor that they have for their elders, and knowing the knowledge that they bring into your communities and what you can glean from them. How important is that to you?
Highly important. I grew up without having, I guess, older figures like grandparents. So I've kind of collected grandparents along the way of, not my blood links, but ones that I was really close with and that helped guide me and raise me. And right now, elders to me are the utmost important because they're the ones who hold our foundation for our culture, and they're the ones who we still can learn off of. They hold everything, the knowledge, the culture, the family structures. They're the guiders.
Well, I hope all of our cultures can learn a little bit from that. Thank you for coming and sharing.
Thank you for having me.
And that wraps up this edition of UBC's Next Big Thing. Until next time, I'm Rosemary Jean Thompson.
That's it for this week's UBC From Here. For more stories from the Okanagan campus, be sure to visit our website at ubco.tv. Once again, I'm Austin Ikseni, and thank you for watching.